Hello, and welcome to the Fantasy Football Draft Assistant Capstone Project final presentation. Our team consists of Caleb, David, Hashim, and myself, Thomas. Fantasy football is a booming industry in the United States, and our team had a desire to build a tool to support smarter, data-driven decisions during fantasy football drafts to get a competitive advantage. So, overall, our goal was to create a recommender system that helps managers draft optimal players in real time to maximize performance during drafts. We did this by predicting future player performance using machine learning models and utilizing predictions, value-based metrics, draft logic, and customizable draft settings to rank those available players and generate personalized recommendations based off of your settings. In the end, our deliverable was an interactive dashboard featuring real-time recommendations, draft tracking, and supporting visualizations.
Here we look at the final results of all our machine learning models. We use 6 different models: linear regression, deep neural networks, multi-layer perceptrons, XGBoost, light GBM, and stacked models for both a standard and PPR scoring target. For our standard scoring target, we found that the stacked model, which was a combination of XGBoost and MLP, performed the best, and you can see it highlighted in green there. And for our PPR model, we saw that light GBM was our best scoring model. So those were the ones that we went ahead to use to kind of feed into the rest of our recommender system. Hyperparameter training was a very important part of our model development. And so we display here this table showing the various hyperparameters that we tuned for some of our different models. For example, with linear, we use the fit, intercept, and positive. For XGBoost and light GBM, some of our most important ones were the number of estimators as well as the learning rate and max def. For MLP, we have important ones such as the activation, alpha, batch size. And for DNN, we have many of the same as MLP, but in addition to varying the size of the hidden layers and with hidden layer sizes. So here we see a representation of our recommender system flow. First, we begin by predicting fantasy points. Depending on the scoring, we use stacked regressor for standard or light GBM for PPR scoring. And then we take a look at the VOR, which is calculated as the predicted points minus the position's replacement level point threshold. We then follow that with position-specific multipliers, for example, QBs at 1.2, kickers at 0.3 to adjust for the positional impact. And we also add a bonus for elite quarterbacks that score above a set threshold. Then we normalize the VOR and predicted points on a 0 to 1 scale. We then calculate a composite score, the overall score we see here, which we also then calculate using a tunable weight. So the overall score is the normalized VOR times 1 minus the VOR weight. And the VOR weight that we choose to use here is 0.7. We then begin to apply our rules-based logic to help simulate a experienced drafter and incorporate strategy into our recommender system. So we avoid early quarterbacks and tight end picks unless they are elite. That's based on the top 5% predicted points at their position. We delay kicker and defense until the final 2 to 3 rounds. We respect the roster limits to prevent overfilling positions. We prioritize the unmet positional needs based on current team composition, and we defer the backup quarterbacks until the final round if a starter's already been selected. And we also force fill the kickers and defense in the final rounds if they're still empty. Finally, we begin to filter and rank the players to provide the top end level recommendations for the players for the recommender system.
We developed our dashboard and user interface using a Dash framework and Bootstrap components, and overall it was designed for simple usability and customization during live drafts. Some of the key features include draft customization, so defining roster settings, scoring type between PPR and standard, and team details. The dynamic recommendations track team selections and adjust your recommendations dynamically based on who's available in your team composition. The draft tracking tracks team selections and updates the player pool and team compositions automatically for you while you're inputting your selections. And if you're interested, you can have custom visualizations that allow you to compare player performance and stats live during the draft. So now you'll get to see some of these features in action through a dashboard walkthrough with Caleb.
Hello everybody, today I'm going to be giving you a walkthrough of the functionality of our dashboard UI for our Fantasy Football Draft Assistant. First, you load up the locally hosted web page and it drops you straight into our draft setup. Here you input your scoring type, the number of teams in your league, the number of rounds in your draft, and your draft position. You can also adjust your roster configuration. So let's say you don't want to draft a backup quarterback because there will be additional backups in the free agency. You can then adjust your QBs to be 1 and increase any other column of your choosing. Say you want to get a backup tight end. Start the draft, and you drop straight into the draft board. Here you can see our recommendations based off our recommender engine, which is powered by our machine learning models. These predicted points come straight from the machine learning models, and then we calculate value over replacement, and these are combined in an aggregate function to calculate this overall score, which we're ultimately filtering based off of. You can also add in players that are not in the existing player base, such as Shadir Sanders, a rookie. So you can add him to the player base, come up to the player base, type in Shadir Sanders, and submit your pick. We'll make a few sample picks just to show you guys what the draft board looks like. Down here we have draft history, so you can see pick by pick who picked what position were they. You can go to the team overview and view from a more aggregate standpoint what teams have what positions are filled. Lastly, you can move over to the visualizations tab, and let's say we want to look at AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. We want to look at their games started and their yards per receiving touchdown. Look at this over a line chart between 2021 and 2024, and those visualizations are produced. You also have the option to create a bar chart, a radar chart, and a box and whisker plot. The goal for us when making this dashboard UI was to make it very easy to use for users and to also give people the ability to grab insights that are not available on the available platforms such as Yahoo Fantasy.
So now I'll just briefly summarize some of our results and the impact we believe that our project has had. So we've created a smart decision-making AI-powered draft assistant, which prioritizes user picks using context-aware logic, which in this case is our AI-powered predictions, value over replacement, and team needs. And those picks are adjusted dynamically based on draft progression and player scarcity. Our recommendation accuracy can be measured through the strong correlation between predicted actual outputs from the 2024 season, and then those were also validated by seeing a 70% alignment with ESPN projected first-round draft picks for the 2025 season. So we also have some metrics to base on the future success or potential future success of our assistant. And we've tied it all together with an intuitive design and ease-of-use dashboard, which enables real-time draft tracking and team management, which clearly displays updated rosters, picks, and player recommendations, and integrates visualizations to compare projections. So that being said, our project still isn't perfect, and there are some limitations that we've identified in this whole process. The first one being that rookies and first-time starters may have a degree of uncertainty, and that just comes down to a lack of data being available on these kinds of players. Our assistant also doesn't help out mid-season with things like trades, waiver additions, or weekly lineup optimization. And we feel as though if someone wanted to create a more robust fantasy football assistant, these are probably some things that they would want to look at. And then finally, our project lacks bye-week balancing. So in fantasy football, you don't want to draft too many players that are missing the same week due to bye weeks, and that is probably something you would also want to keep in mind. But given that, we've also recommended some things for people that do want to build on this project. One of them being public deployment via web hosting. So making this project available to as many people as possible, as opposed to simply those with access to the GitHub repo. And finally, integrating live player stats somehow, so injuries, changes to depth charts, bye weeks. And we feel as though if you can get a source like Sports Radar and access their API for live real-time stat tracking, we feel like that integration could go a long way. Our full project repo with code, reports, and resources can be viewed at github.com/Caleb10Miller/fantasyfootballhelper, and we've also hyperlinked it to this slide.
Thank you everyone for watching our final capstone presentation, and we'll now be opening the floor for questions.